Welcome to Dancin Moon Songcast. I'm Scott Simpson, casting from Dancin Moon Studio in Spearfish Canyon on the north end of the Black Hills of South Dakota, right on the banks of the Spearfish Creek. If you'd like to follow along, you can download a free PDF of my lyric book from scottsimpsonmusic.com/lyrics, and of course you can find links to all my music there as well. So let's get casting and find out what song we're going to talk about this time. Well, this is episode 4 of our 12-episode series in which we're talking about the songs on the new album from 2020, Ozzie's Guitar 20 Years Later, and also listening to the originals that came from Ozzie's Guitar, my first album put out in 2000. This episode, we're going to talk about a song called Dry Land. And we'll start off by listening to the 2000 Ozzie's Guitar version of Dry Land, talk about that a little bit, and then take a listen to the new 2020 Ozzie's Guitar 20 Years Later version of Dry Land. So this first one from 2000, Dry Land.
I was a boy, we used to go down to the river, strip down, jumping fast, jump out on the bank and shake and shiver. Oh, it's hard to understand when the flow of the current would stay on dry land. Well, the current's fast, it'll take you down in a hurry, you won't last. Boy, you make your mama worry if you don't understand. When the flow of the current will stay on dry land. So much you've never seen yet, so much to do. That river's gonna call your name, yeah, the river's got a one-way ticket for you. Now it's icy cold, when the snowmelt flows in the springtimeFeet grow numb. You can freeze to death in no time if you don't understand. When the flow of the current will stay on dry land. Take the path of least resistance, cut through the mountainside, dig themselves a grave in their persistence, so you must understand. When the flow of the current will stay on dry land. So much you've never seen yet, so much to do. That river's gonna call your name, yeah, the river got a one-way ticket. So much you've never seen, yeah, so much to do. That river's gonna call your name, yeah, the river's got a one-way ticket for me and you. Yeah, yeah, for me and you.
That was Dry Land from 2000's Ozzie's Guitar, a very upbeat song that was lots and lots of fun to play. In fact, I remember I didn't, at the time, I wasn't playing a whole lot publicly, but I remember this song in particular. I put together a really, really brief set. I mean, like a set of maybe 3 songs, and I took it to it was a coffee house in Rapid City, and they were having an open mic night, so I played this one and a couple of others, and this one was high energy, lots of fun to play, and really enjoyed it. A couple of friends who listened to the album. One in particular whose opinion I trusted a great deal. He said this was his favorite on that first album. So we're going to take a look at the lyrics and talk about the writing of the song and maybe what went into it and the ideas behind it, and then we'll talk just a little bit about that instrumentation in that first version, and then we'll listen to the new one. So first verse starts this way. When I was a boy, we used to go down to the river, strip down and jump in fast, jump out on the bank and shake and shiver. It's hard to understand when to float with the current, when to stay on dry land. So the memory that really sparked this song was my memory of being a camper at Nebraska Youth Camp, which was just outside of Kearney. It was a little Christian youth camp there in Nebraska, where I grew up, and the Platte River ran through just right there. Kind of was the one boundary of the camp property, and I recall, and this would probably get some counselors in trouble if anyone knew, but way back then, or even remembered their names or who was a counselor at the time. But I recall, my first couple of years going there, one of the big things we used to do with the guy's cabin was we'd all run down to the Platte River, and I just recall the very first time we went down there. I was assuming, I had put on my swim trunks and stuff, because we also had a lake there, and we did have swimming. It was a little Christian camp back in the 70s, and so we had boys swim time and girls swim time, and of course never the two shall meet. So anyway, our boys' cabin though went over. We decided to get in the Platte River. It was kind of low that time, so it was fairly safe. It wasn't a big rushing river. It was one of those big wide. If you've ever been on the Platte, it's one of those big wide rivers that's got lots of sandbars and shallow areas, and there's some heavy current here and there, but not real bad. But we went down there and somebody said, "Hey, let's skinny dip." So we took off all the clothes that we had on, swim trunks and socks and shoes, and hung them up in this old dead tree that had fallen over, and so just hung them all over the branches there, and then jumped in and swam. And that was one of the big things, to tell everybody, yeah, we went skinny dipping. I don't know. Looking back on it, it's kind of weird, but it had this feeling of of freedom, also of doing something that you might get in trouble for. If your parents knew about that, or if the camp director knew about it, but our counselor was cool with it, so whatever. Anyway, that's what sparked the song, and I have lived on or been by many, many rivers in my life. I was born in Memphis, Tennessee, where it's just like, in a hospital that was right on the edge of the Mississippi. I here in South Dakota spent a good deal of time around the Missouri River. Of course, in Nebraska, I was there on the Platte River. And right now I live in Spearfish Canyon, and my studio's here, and we have the Spearfish Creek right out in front. So there's something remarkable about water and about rivers and creeks and streams and all of that, and I've always loved it. And the idea, especially here on the Spearfish Creek, it's fast moving. It's up high in elevation, which means quite often it's very, very cold, especially when it's runoff. When it's melting snow. It's water that just very recently was frozen. Very cold. So it began my thinking about currents and about the coldness of water and about the tug of water, the pulling downstream of water. And I remember getting in the Platte, and some days it was warm. We were there in the summer, but some days it was a little chilly too, with a real breeze. And so when you got out, the breeze would be just, and here you are, you've been skinny dipping, so everything's exposed, and it's just you're shivering and shivering. This idea of making the decision, do I jump in and let the current carry me, or do I stay on dry ground? Do I stay on dry land? Do I stay solid and planted? And that's always a question when you're around a river. There's this wonderful stuff about letting the river carry you on down. You think of Huck Finn, you think of adventure, you think of seeing where the river might take you. But the key is, when the river takes you, you're not really in control. You're surrendering to the river. And that's okay sometimes. Sometimes it's not. Sometimes it can be dangerous. Sometimes submitting to the current around you might be a good thing, just going along. But sometimes it gets you in trouble. And that's really the core of this song. So let's take a look at the next verse. The current's fast. It'll take you down in a hurry. No, you won't last, boy. You'll make your mama worry if you don't understand when to float with the current, when to stay on dry land. So I wrote this song not long before the release of that first album. So it was probably late 90s, and I was living here in Spearfish, enthralled, of course, with Spearfish Creek, but having experienced lots of rivers in my life, and also having experienced as an adult who was married and who had children and who was not in his very first job, I had already experienced this tension between just going along, doing what's expected, following the crowd, fitting in, and being what I have a tendency to be, which is somewhat of a nonconformist. Someone who, marches to the beat of a different drum or refuses to float on down the river and kind of digs his heels in on the shore, or however you want to see that. And so the struggle of as a adult, as a professional adult, as a husband, as a father, as a human being in this community, how do I determine when to kind of go along and when to resist, when to stand back and say, no, I'm not going to let that current carry me? And I don't know that there's a resolution to that, but I know there's danger in not making the right decision. I wouldn't want to be one to say it's never right to go along with the general community. Sometimes that's the best thing to do. Sometimes that's the right thing to do. Just because it's going along doesn't mean it's wrong. But just because just because you go along with most of the people also doesn't mean it's right. So we get into the chorus, into the refrain. There's so much you've never seen and so much to do. That river's going to call your name. Yeah, the river's got a one-way ticket for you. So much you've never seen, so much to do. That river's going to call your name. Yeah, the river's got a one-way ticket for you. So, this call to go along, to do what is expected, to fit in with the current, to fit in with the crowd, to just let it carry you on down. That's going to call you all along. That's kind of a natural thing. I mean, we don't like necessarily as human beings to be just completely out on our own. We like community. We like being part of something that's larger than us, and that's a good thing. It's always going to call your name. But there's a lot that you don't know. There's a lot that you haven't seen yet. And once you decide to plunge in, to take that plunge and to just go with it, you really can't undo that. Now, you can make a different decision later. You can crawl out on the bank, a few miles downstream, but you're going to be in a different place than you were at the beginning. You can't undo the decisions like that are made. You can only make a new decision at a later point. So it's really a song about considering what is at stake and knowing whether or not that natural tug to just kind of go along, whether or not that's a healthy thing in whatever given situation you're in. The next verse, it's icy cold when the snowmelt flows in the springtime. Feet grow numb. You can freeze to death in no time if you don't understand when to float with the current, when to stay on dry land. This verse, I suppose, grew out of and makes me think of those times when I have made that decision. Oh yeah, okay, I'm going to get with the program. We're all going to go, and you get well into it, and suddenly you begin to realize that this is not all that I thought it was. This is not all that it's cracked up to be. This what I thought we were doing, where I thought we were going. I'm not so sure that's the right thing. This is getting rough. But you know what? Once you've already committed, once you're there in the flow with the current, it's that much harder to get out. If you never got in the first place, no biggie. But if you're already in and you're flowing and you're there and you're in community with all those others and you're all going the same direction, to suddenly say, whoa, I'm getting out of this. I'm going a different direction here. Not only are you flowing, swimming against the current, but you're also removing yourself from the community that you've known. And that happens. It happens in religion. It happens in politics. It happens in families. It happens in work spaces. It happens in all kinds of communities where you've been one of the group. You've been part of it. And then for whatever reason, you realized, this is killing me. I'm going to die if I stay in this. This is wrong, or whatever it happens to be. And you pull out, and suddenly you're at odds with those people that were once a part of your community. So that's tricky. It's tricky. And that's another reason why you consider strongly, is this a time to go along, or is this a time to stand on my own? So after that verse, we have a little instrumental bit in there. The song is mostly acoustic guitar, and we've got a kind of a driving rhythm track that I built on my little keyboard, and then a mandolin that to me, I'm not sure. This was like one of the first songs that I played mandolin on. And I'm not even sure I had the thing tuned right. It's got a really interesting sound. I like it. but it has this sort of minor key sort of feeling in the mandolin that keeps ongoingly, and then that comes in that instrumental section. Almost slightly Middle Eastern in style, and I'm not sure why. I guess it's the minor key in that. So, but anyway, so we go through that, and then we come to our last verse. Well, the rains will come. They take the path of least resistance, cut through the mountainside, dig themselves a grave with their persistence. But you must understand when to float with a current, when to stay on dry land. So the rains will come. It's not all blue skies and rainbows and sun and loveliness. There come these rainy days, and when those storms come, and they really dump, I tell you what, they go with the path of least resistance, and they carve mountains. They cut through canyons. They create canyons. They dig, and they take everything with them. And sometimes the really rough times, the really difficult times, will sweep you up, and they will take you with the rest of the crowd, and they will haul you off downstream to your grave. And those are the times when it's really most difficult to be objective about things, when everything is just not going your way. It is hard to not just jump on some bandwagon and slide down into oblivion, to have enough distance to say, okay, let me try to be objective about this. Let me not just be carried away with the emotion of the moment, the frustration, the anger. Once again, politics, religion, these things we care about deeply, we get emotionally attached to. When they go wrong, it's so easy to be carried down in a wave of emotion, just with the prevailing feelings around you. We wrap up the song. There's so much you've never seen, so much to do. That river's going to call your name. Yeah, the river's got a one-way ticket for me and you. So I suppose it's a warning song about the draw of the current, the draw of the prevailing attitude around you, the draw of groupthink of the crowd. It's going to ask you and plead with you and reward you for conforming, for going along, for jumping in and just letting yourself be carried along. But it's a warning to do that thinkingly, to not do it mindlessly, to not just because that's where everything's going, just jump in. There may be times when you jump in and you join that crowd and you go along, and that's okay. But there are other times when you can't, and if you don't know the difference, then you're bound to get yourself in trouble. Advice to myself as a young man, advice to anyone of any age, because I don't think this draw goes away with age. I think it gets easier. It gets easier maybe a little bit to just kind of be your own person and be solid in that when you get a little older, but that's not always the case. So, like I said, high energy rhythm and guitar, 6-string acoustic guitar, that kind of crazy mandolin going on there, and then my wife did some all the strings that come in there. She did that arrangement on the keyboard, and so Cheryl did a few of these on this first album, where she did some incidental piano or especially some strings. And so all of that was just lots of fun, high energy, and again, one that was fun to perform live at the time. I haven't performed it live in a very, very long time, so maybe with the new album, I'll have some opportunities to do that. So speaking of the new album, let's listen to the new version of Dry Land, which is similar, certainly recognizable, but also deviates quite a bit. Some fresh stuff. I had a whole lot of fun with this arrangement and working out this arrangement, and working out the fresh vocal harmonies that my wife Cheryl did on this version. So let's listen to now Dry Land from Ozzie's guitar 20 years later.
When I was a boy, we used to go down to the river, strip down, jumping fast, jump out on a bank and shake and shiver. Oh, it's hard to understand when to float with the current, when to stay on dry land. Well, the current's fast, it'll take you down in a hurry, you won't last. Boy, you'll make your mama worry if you don't understand when to flow with the current, when to stay on dry land, when to stay on dry land, yeah. So much you've never seen, yeah. So much to do. Without a river gonna call your name, yeah. The river got a one-way ticket for you.
That river got a one-way ticket.
Got a one-way ticket for you, yes it does, yeah.
That river got a one-way ticket for you.
When it's icy cold, when the snowmelt flows and the springtime feet grow numb, boy, you can freeze to death in no time if you don't understand when to flow with the current, when to stay on that dry land, stay on dry land. Cut through the mountainside, dig themselves a grave with their persistence, yeah, but you must understand, boy, when to flow with the current, when to stay on dry land, when to stay on dry land, yeah. So much you've never seen, yeah. So much to do, yeah, yeah. That river gonna call your name, yeah, the river got a one-way ticket. There's so much you've never seen, yeah, so much to do. That river's gonna call your name, yeah, the river got a one-way
So that was the 2020 version of Dry Land from Ozzie's guitar 20 years later. This is actually the very first of the songs from that album that I began revisioning. This is the one I started working on it. I said, hey, what can I do with this to make it, to bring it into a new life, to bring out something fresh in it. And so as I got started on this and working on it, this is, I suppose, the one that convinced me, yeah, this is a project that's worth trying. I think I can do this. I think I can take some old songs that are pretty good and breathe new life into them. So what is probably most noticeable about this? First of all, I took the key down just a little bit, which means at the beginning of the song, I'm singing a lot lower in my range. But as is always the case, when you take it down, it gives you space to go up. In other words, if I had left it in the key that it was originally in, I would have been straining into the clouds way too high. To go up to get the dynamic from lows to highs that I get in the song now. So I took it down a little bit so that I could start out low when I was a boy, and then reach for those highs, those growly highs, a little bit later. The other key piece to this is really highlighting the blues nature of the song. It was always sort of a had a bluesy feel, but really highlighting it by slowing it down slightly, but then putting a real swing into it. That's kind of a lesson for growing older. You slow it down, but you go ahead and put a swing into it. Just a little advice there. So anyway, so as we are highlighting the blues nature, it ends up for me, because I absolutely love harmonica as a solo instrument. It makes the song a perfect vehicle for that harmonica, which is featured throughout the song and then highlighted in the instrumental section. Now, all of that comes together. The opportunity for the low, very low to high, kind of growly vocals, the harmonica, the swing in there, the slightly slowed down, it created a really great opportunity for what I really wanted to hear, and which is the case really for every album, every song on this album. To really bring out the harmony vocals, which this is one where I had planned and expected that both my daughters and my wife would be singing on it, doing some harmonies, and because of the pandemic, we were distanced from my daughters by the time I needed to get to this one. So my wife just knocked it out of the park with Cheryl knocked it out of the park with this one. I can't say enough how pleased I am with those background vocals. And that's why once we had recorded them, I said, we got to pull that into the beginning of the song. We got to let them come up like they do out of the water. I had a recording of Spearfish Creek there at the beginning that you hear, and then you hear kind of the main guitar. We'll talk about the instruments here in just a minute, but the main guitar kind of coming up out of the water, as well as those female vocals. That river got a one-way ticket. That river got a one-way ticket, and so I pulled that phrase out of the lyrics, and we really made some sweet background vocals that just really knock it out of the park. I think just absolutely love the sound that Cheryl got on those and the harmonies that she worked out. So let's talk just a little bit about the instrumentation too, because it's kind of interesting. When I first started recording this, I pulled out my 6-string nylon guitar and recorded the basic guitar, the basic song with that. And it was fine, and it really was just fine. But it just didn't have. I wanted something a little grittier, a little different, a little. The first version was very acoustic. It was steel string acoustic guitar, but this one felt like it needed to not just be acoustic. So what I did is instead of going straight to the electric guitar on that. I decided to play around with some effects on the nylon acoustic guitar that I had already laid down. So I brought the effects in after having already recorded that, and got that kind of that. I don't know if it's it almost feels like a watery sound coming up out from under the water on the main guitar as you hear it from the beginning. Which felt really good, in part because, and the story I've told already, Ozzie's guitar, nylon stringed classical guitar, got kind of messed up in a flood. And so all of these things kind of fit together, and it started to feel like, yeah, this is great. This one needs to have a nylon classical guitar, but that is put on some effects that make it sound like it's coming up out from underwater. And so that's because the theme of the song has everything to do with water. And then it still needed something bright, though, on the guitar end of that. So by the second, I believe it's on the second verse, we bring in 12-string. Steel string guitar, the same sort of picking as the other, but of course with the 12-string you get the octave spread there, and this 12-string, this particular 12-string, not an extremely expensive one, it's an Ibanez, but it was one that I got. We have this store here in town that is connected with Habitat for Humanity. It's called Restore, and people turn in usually old building supplies and furniture things and stuff like that. Well, I had a friend who was working there, and he said, hey, somebody turned in an old 12-string guitar, and it looks like it's not in too bad a shape. You want to come look at it? And so I did, and sure enough, it was in decent shape. Like I said, not a super expensive guitar, but worth the price at Restore. So I bought that, and that became the 12-string that shows up in a couple of songs on this album. So once again, an homage to Ozzie's guitar, which got kind of flooded, and yet now has been restored and can play, and an homage to a guitar that got kind of sent off downriver to the second-hand place, but now has been reinstituted and shows up in my big album. So anyway, the instruments felt really good, just really appropriate for this, and it all fit together really nicely, and as I said, became a really fine vehicle for the harmonica work, which is just, for me, when I get the song together and the song is working, and then you can pull out the harmonica, and that's where I can really do some improvisation, and it's just fun. The process is fun. And so there we have it. We have Dry Land from 2000's Ozzie's guitar, the original, and the brand new Dry Land from Ozzie's guitar 20 years later. A song that didn't get sucked on down the river, stayed on dry land long enough for us to catch it twice. I'm not sure if that metaphor is working. Anyway, thank you for joining me today for a fun trip down memory lane with Dry Land. You can find all my music, all my lyrics at ScottSimpsonMusic.com. You can stream or purchase on Apple Music, iTunes, Amazon. You can stream on Spotify, iHeartRadio, lots and lots of places for streaming. You can get this podcast, Dancin Moon Songcast, now on just about any platform that does podcasts. We just last week expanded that, or maybe week before last, expanded that. So look around for us. We're on lots of different platforms, so that's really, really exciting. I appreciate you joining me once again. This was episode number 4 in a series of 12. We'll be listening to the remainder of the songs from the new album, Ozzie's Guitar, 20 years later, listening to them and to their counterparts from 2000. It's a real joy. Remember, you got to know when to jump in with the crowd, and you got to know when to stand on your own and stay put. Let that crowd go on downhill. You stay on the bank, dry and warm. Be well.